Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. I am Simply G, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the manga that I got for this month, February 2020. There's a whole lot here. This might be the most manga that I've ever gotten in 1 month ever. Certainly, probably for the period that I've been doing YouTube. I have over 40 books here, which is just ludicrous for me. I never get this amount of books, but I think numbers were definitely boosted because I actually got a couple entire series, which really inflated the numbers for this month. But I'm just going to warn you that this is going to be a longer video because of that. I hope you guys all enjoy regardless, and I'll get straight into the video. Hope you guys enjoy. First up is a non-manga comic. This is a fairly new release and a series that I really like. It's very sweet. This is Alice Oseman's Heartstopper, a love story between two boys from England, Charlie and Nick. It's really good. If you like sort of LGBT or male romance stuff, then check this one out. Alice Oseman is very well known for her novels. She writes a lot of YA, and these characters exist sort of within the same universe or the same stories as her novels. So you do get kind of little cross references throughout. So it's a little bit like Clamp, but not nearly as obtuse and intertwining. This particular book is the boys' trip with school to Paris and them becoming more comfortable with each other and being open about their relationship to the people in their lives and their friends and other people. It's really, really sweet. It's ongoing, and I think it's on Tapas and a couple other webcomic platforms. Check it out. The first 2 volumes are also available. I actually got the first volume via the Kickstarter release, and obviously it has a much wider release now, so yeah, check it out if it sounds like your thing. So speaking of Kickstarter, I got these because I got my US proxy box this month, and these were things that I helped kickstart. I've been I followed this story a little bit, and I'm really happy to have it in print. I think the team is working on a sequel to this as well, but this is Tokyo Demons, and it's a light novel, kind of inspired story by Leanne Centaur, and has illustrations by Rem. It's a 3-volume completed series. It's about teens in Tokyo who have quite bizarre superpowers almost, and so there's that element, but it does get very dark. They get involved with this illegal drug, and so they find themselves in this dark underbelly of society, and prior to this they hadn't had a real great upbringing anyway. One of our main characters can turn into a swarm of bugs, so that's her power. It's really strong. I won't say the illustrations are brilliant for this, but they are very solidly good. I also, as part of this Kickstarter, got Know What You Want, which is smutty spin-off. It's just various sexy side stories with various characters, but the story itself is not really focused on that or anything. I think it has a really interesting mix of characters. I think it has a really compelling storyline. If you haven't ever tried any kind of original English language light novel type of stuff, this was actually originally published and serialized in Sparkler Monthly, which used to be a magazine with obviously a focus on original English language products, but that were generally inspired by like shoujo manga, josei manga, a lot of queer creators, a lot of female creators, and of course they also had prose like this story. Really, really happy to have this. It was a long time ago that I actually, you know, put my pledge towards it, so it took a long time to get to me because it was fulfilled to my proxy address. But I'm happy to have it now and actually reread it all in one chunk, because I haven't read it in a while. And it is a real shame because Sparkle Monthly doesn't exist anymore. They just weren't able to make it work after their 5th anniversary, I believe. But I do believe that Tokyo, the sequel, which I think is Tokyo Ghost, something like that, is currently being made and hopefully will be published by them at some point, and we'll get a similar, I wouldn't be surprised if the series got a similar sort of Kickstarter to print it like the original series has. Next, I got a art book this month. This is just one of the few art books that I got as a graduation present to myself. And this is the illustrated art book of the currently ongoing manga, Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. This has a currently airing anime that I know a lot of people are enjoying, and obviously the manga is done by Ida Iro. I love Hanako-kun. I think the manga is great. I really enjoy the television show. I was following the manga digitally up until this point, and it's definitely my type of series. I just love the style of the manga and anime as well. I think the character designs are really memorable. I think the characters all look very unique to each other, and I really like the kind of stocky and just, I don't know, just it has a very interesting look that isn't typical of manga, but I think it lends itself well to this story that does have such a supernatural element to it. If you don't know what Hanako-kun is about, it's about a high school girl who tries to make a contract between one of the 7 wonders or 7 mysteries of her school, which is Hanako-san, normally depicted in Japanese media as a young girl who's stuck in a toilet stall. But when she meets Hanako, he is a boy, and she gets a little bit confused, but she asks for his help anyway, and through a series of events, she ends up becoming his assistant, kind of. And then there's a whole bunch of other, characters within the school, and conflicts with other school wonders and mysteries, and it's very, 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 very good. And we learn a little bit more about Hanako himself as the series progresses. Check out the anime, check out the manga, if that sounds like something that you're interested in. And this art book is definitely one that, when I heard it was getting a reprint, which it got back in January, I decided to jump on it because, I think it went out of print fairly quickly, but because of the new anime, I do think it will hopefully come back in stock and get a reprint again, because obviously it's very popular, and it's sort of at its height of popularity right now. Finally, for extra bits and bobs, we have the Japanese volume of Yona of the Dawn, volume 30. I picked this one up because it came with a special thing. As you can see on the obi right there, it came with a 30 arts collection, and this is basically 30 postcards of artwork from the series, full color. And dang, as a big Yona fan, I was like, hey, why not? It's kind of interesting because Yona has had quite a couple of art exclusives and art limited bonuses with their limited editions. And as considering this series is so popular and it's one that I love and I love the artwork for, and there isn't like a proper art book as of such, it yeah, made sense for me to pick this up. The limited editions for this type of thing aren't actually that expensive or anything. They're about the same like normal price of a normal English language manga volume, so it's not like it was a huge investment either. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this is still fairly easy to find, and if you are a huge Yona fan, you may want to pick it up for yourself, because it's nice, I think, to have some artwork from an artist whose work you really enjoy, especially from a series that you really enjoy as well. So yeah, this is the 30 Arts collection, collecting Mizuho Kusanagi's works for Yona of the Dawn. So I have a little bit of an oddity, maybe something that people haven't come across yet, but this is a title that it's a doujin work, an officially translated doujin work by and released by Glacier Bay Books. I follow the person who runs Glacier Bay on Twitter. It's QuantaCat. Follow them. They're really cool. They know a lot about comics and independent comics especially. Their store stocks doujin, like independent doujin that are untranslated, but this is their first translated work that they've put out, that they translated themselves. And this is Sleepy Child, and it's just a short little story about a little, I guess, cat boy who goes into his dreams and meets his grandfather because he's having problems sleeping too much. And it's really sweet, short and sweet. I think the cat motif is meant to be evocative of things like Night on the Galactic Railroad, where all the characters are like anthropomorphic cats. So it's not a furry thing, I don't think. But either way, it's short, it's sweet. It's, I think, $6 or $8 on their website. If it sounds like something you might be interested in, check it out. They also have an upcoming anthology that they'll be putting out. You may have seen it being reported on Anime News Network. It's really cool that we are seeing more like indie publishers put together these types of things. Obviously, Hollow and Black Hook and things like that. They put out a lot of doujin and indie titles as well. And this, I'm happy to support Glacier Bay because not only do I know the people behind it relatively, I like to see that more of this type of stuff become available to English-speaking audiences, even if it is a very niche little thing. I'm only going to mention this in passing because I got this from my proxy shipping, and I bought it merely because it is, I wanted it for display more so than to read. And this is Noragami Volume 1, Stray God. This is the Loot Crate exclusive. I already have Volume 1 of Noragami. I have the entire series of Noragami. But this has a different cover art for it. So I'm basically just going to take it to show it off, as you can see. So this is when Loot Crate was doing, anime boxes. And they had special releases with fancy covers on them. This is one of those. I got it off of eBay or whatever, and yeah, I didn't buy it for any other purpose other than to show it off, to have it on the shelves behind my Yato figurine. And I really like Adachi Toka's art style. I think this is a pretty nice cover, and I really like Noragami. It's a great manga, so yeah, just thought I'd mention that. Next we have a release from Fanfare Ponetmon. This is Korea as Viewed by 12 Creators. This is kind of a sister volume to the book Japan, which Fanfare also put out. That was by 17 creators, a mix of French and local comics creators. So obviously French and Korean in this book, and in that one it was French and Japanese. And it's a reflection and a perspective on the country itself from obviously someone who lives there and is within that society versus people who are tourists who aren't from that country initially or didn't grow up in that culture. So it's really interesting. You get a lot of different stories. There were some very well-known Japanese creators in the Japan book. This book is a little bit hard to find. It's not like super out of print or anything, but I did have to do a little bit of digging to find a copy, but this I did buy secondhand. It's in pretty much perfect condition, and because it is different comic creators, you do get various different art styles and stories and all sorts of things. So you do get, I mean, like with any collected short story collection, you're going to have things that you like, things that you dislike, certain aspects of countries that may be more obvious to you versus whoever's created the comic, or something that seems weird that is being focused on. But yeah, there's a lot to enjoy with these collections. I think Fanfare does a pretty good job at trying to diversify the indie comics and kind of classic or well-established comics in English. Obviously, they're very well known for Taniguchi's works being released in English. And these are all like memoir type stories. They're all fairly adult and, you know, reflective. So don't go in there expecting like a shonen action tournament type of thing. They are realistic reflections on people's experiences. But if that sounds like your thing, you might want to hunt down a copy of this and learn a little bit about Korea, discover some pretty interesting comics creators, both French and Korean. And yeah. Next we have the most exciting release, not only of the month, but maybe of the whole year, the whole past 5 years. And that is, of course, Ryoko Ikera's The Rose of Versailles. This is a classic 70s shoujo about our main character, Lady Oscar, who was raised as a boy by her father in order to become a guard for the royal palace, and who ultimately becomes the personal guard of Marie Antoinette, pre-revolutionary France, obviously. It is so good. It's that exact 70s drama. If you're wanting to get into some of the most influential manga of all time, Rose of Versailles is the place to be. Rudon has done a great job with this release. The translation is beautiful. The actual pages are beautiful, archival quality. Hardcover, of course, it does have color pages as well. It only took them 5 years for them to release it, but it is well worth the wait. And the complete series will be released in 4 2-in-1 omnibuses, or omnibuy. This series is probably the most, definitely in the top 3 most influential manga in Japan ever. They're still Versailles dedicated fans. It still influences so many more new recent things. It started so many tropes and trends and basically inspired so many creators and very famous famous stories that you may be more familiar with. I don't think you can really overplay how much this story has impacted Japanese culture and the shoujo movement especially, of course. But man, this, like, even now, Rose of Versailles has stage shows, it gets goods, it's had a Western film adaptation for a Japanese, it's weird, it's a Japanese made movie, but all of the characters, it's filmed in Europe, all of the characters speak English, and it's just weird, but it's a really good movie as well. So there's been various adaptations. There's, of course, the anime adaptation as well. And it's kind of overwhelmingly surprising that this has never been licensed and translated and released in English prior to this. But at the same time, I can kind of understand why. I'm sure that this is not an easy license to work with or to even just pay for. I'm sure that there's a very high asking price for this series. So yes, if you're a fan of sort of Moto Hagio and Keiko Takemiya and Ikada's other works that we've gotten in English, and you really like this 70s dramatic shoujo, Western kind of classic lit type of story, you would be doing yourself a disservice to not pick up Rose of Versailles. It is absolutely beautiful. Lady Oscar is a phenomenal protagonist, makes everyone fall in love with her, regardless of your gender or your sexuality. And it's just a really compelling political drama with a romance story in there as well. But it just is everything. It's the epitome of what shoujo was in this period of time and what it would continue to be and what it would later evolve into. It's just so good, and check it out. I'm also, next month, March, the podcast is going to be on the year 24 and the lovely ladies who put out so many shoujo classics during that period. And even now to this day, this is kind of one of the cornerstones for that podcast. And if you're wanting to know a little bit more about the history of manga and some of the stuff that has impacted in Japanese culture, then yeah, check this one out. And also check the podcast out. Next, I have the most recent volume of Vinland Saga. This is volume 11. So, omnibus collection for volume 21 and 22. This is by Makoto Yukimura, and this is a ongoing Viking historical fiction that has had quite a few changes and evolutions of characters over the course of its run. But I think one of the major themes in the story is, of course, the futility of violence and war and revenge as well. Just the meaninglessness of that type of violence, which was so prevalent in Viking society, and trying to disengage yourself from a society that does value that so highly, and also try to teach yourself and other people the value of life. It's really, really wonderful. Personally, I really have appreciated this story more as it's gone on. I think the first 4 volumes for Omnibuy which is what was adapted in the anime, if people were watching it a couple seasons ago. That's definitely very good stuff, very strong, but it is, even in the manga, described as the prologue to this story. So we're kind of now currently in the meat of the story, like the proper story and its themes now with this part of the story. We've had a couple arcs since then. We're currently in a really interesting one. I really like how many more characters have been introduced since the beginning, and we've had more lady characters show up, which is always cool, because I do think that Yukimura does really well with writing women, but he doesn't, like, there wasn't a lot of them to talk about in the first couple volumes. So now there is, and it makes it that much better. I'm sure everyone is reading this, or is at least somewhat aware of this series. It is hugely popular. It had a huge social media boost from fans after Kodansha kind of implied that low sales were threatening it to be cancelled. And I've said this before with this series, I still see the sentiment of, like, you have to buy it in order to support the series. It's going to be cancelled. Guys, that's not true. Like, that's not the case anymore. It may have been the case prior to this, 3, 4, 5 years ago, when that seemed to be the narrative. But I do think that there's an element of very cunning marketing in that, and especially with the anime adaptation now, I don't think, and with the huge push from Mangatube and just general manga readers, that this series is in no way in threat of being cancelled. It just isn't. There's no possible way. So you don't have to buy this series to support it, to make sure that it keeps being printed in English, any more so than you do with any other title. There are other titles that deserve your attention and your support more urgently than Vinland Saga does. That's not to say that this isn't worth buying or reading, or of course enjoying and talking about and encouraging people to try and to buy, but don't do it for the reasons of, like, oh, well, it's going to be cancelled if people don't buy it. Because, as I said, that's very presumably of me, but it seems very obvious that would not be the case anymore. So, yes, Vinland Saga, very, very good. I really like Yukimura's other works, which Planetas is the one we've gotten in English. And he's a really solid writer. I think he has a lot of really good parts and real nuance to his writing. And I think that the historical aspect of this is done quite well as well. It doesn't just feel like a placeholder for having the characters be cool in that period. I don't know. It feels like proper research goes into the series, which is always good. So yes, Vinland Saga, definitely one I would recommend, although if you are wary of, like, violence and Viking warfare and things like that, then maybe, brace yourself or avoid it, but otherwise you should definitely check it out. And if you dislike it after the prologue, happens, after it changes, then you're kind of missing the point of the series, but that's your prerogative, so, do whatever you want. But as I said, this series just continues to get better as it goes, and I look forward to the 12th volume, which is not solicited yet, and I'm not sure when we will get it, but it'll come at some point, because, as I said, these are 2-in-1, so it needs to wait for volume 24 to be released in Japan. So next is a title which has just recently finished being released in its re-releases. I was very interested. I've read the first volume of this, or I guess the first omnibus of this previously, and knew that I wanted to continue, but I just hadn't gotten around to getting any more or to following up on that. So now that it's finished, I am going to be doing that over the next coming months. So this is Blade of the Immortal, Omnibus 1, and then we have Omnibus 2, Omnibus 3, and Omnibus 4. So all 4 of these releases are 3-in-1s from Dark Horse. This is a 31 volume series by Hiroaki Samura, who is also getting another series of his released by Kodansha sometime this year, which I'm very keen about. And some people are worried that the volumes of some of these omnibus volumes are already out of print or like not stock. You know, bookstores don't have stock for it. Do not worry. It is not out of print. Don't fret that you've missed out. Don't start screaming that Dark Horse, you know, you'll never be able to read it, because that is not true. Dark Horse has admitted and has repeatedly proven that they have a very odd print schedule. So it does mean that they will only reprint something or give another print run to something, which is different from a reprint, when demand reaches a certain level. And this, like, the demand for this is still high. You haven't missed out. You're not gonna not have volume 7 of the Omnibus. It's coming. I've even seen it back in stock on some stores already, so you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. So this, if you are unaware of this series, also has an anime adaptation as well, kind of coincidentally, which I haven't watched. I am hoping to watch that, but some people have said it's rushed. I don't know. I cannot comment on that as of right now. But this is the story of a kind of wandering samurai who is immortal thanks to these strange worms that exist inside of his body. So he is unable to be killed. Basically, anytime he gets an injury, even if it is life-threatening, the worms will kind of patch him up and he'll be right as rain. He is notoriously known for having killed 100 men prior to the series, and then so instead, now having been granted immortality, he has decided to kill 100 or 1,000 bad guys, or kill 1,000 people for the good of humanity, in order to repent for his violent past. So he meets this young teenage girl who is trying to get revenge against a group who murdered her father 2 years prior in order to take over their dojo and get rid of, like, just swordsmen in general. So she's looking for a bodyguard. He decides to help her get revenge, and so it's the story of them traveling together and doing that and meeting various people along the way. It's very, very good. This is, I know, another thing that I know people say about this particular release is that it's flipped. It's not actually. It is, the panels have been rearranged by, I believe, Samura himself, or at least by request of Samura, in order to be read from left to right, so in a more like Western style of comic. And that was the case with the original Dark Horse releases. It has been maintained for this re-release because Samura insisted on it. So it's not like they just literally flipped the image and printed it like that, which is what used to happen back in the day for manga. Each of these panels have been like cut out and rearranged. So none of the artwork is actually flipped, but the paneling placement has been moved, if that makes sense. It's a little bit of a unusual thing, and certainly not the norm for current manga standards, but it is, it doesn't, for me, it hasn't impacted how I read it, and I don't think that should impact how you view the series as a whole either, especially considering how beloved the story is. We're not going to ever get like a quote-unquote untouched, like, original version of this story, at least not for another 10-15 years. This is a great way to read this series. A lot of people have had nothing but praise for the entirety of it for a very, very long time, but it was out of print from Dark Horse for a long time in the singles. Now it's all out in 10 volumes. I believe the 5th volume is the foreign one, because the rest are 3-in-1s. So yeah, I think that's how it's broken down. Anyway, Blade of the Immortal is definitely worth a look if you like kind of samurai action stories, if you like this type of bodyguard and vassal type of stories. It's very reminiscent of later titles like Katana Gatari or Moribito or Samurai Champloo. It's a tale as old as time, basically, but it's done very, very well, and Samura is a great creator. I think he just does a really good job with his works. I will say, like with this type of story, generally, be wary of not only extreme violent action sequences, but there is, of course, always sexual violence and threats and things like that as well. So if you are sensitive to that, just be aware of that going in. Next may come as a surprise for my collection, for people who have been watching my videos for a long time. I said this in my anime video as well, but I don't know how many of you guys who watch my manga videos are interested in that, so I don't know how many people are watching that. But this month I also picked up the complete series of Paradise Kiss by Ai Yazawa. So as you may be able to tell, this is the vertical edition, the older edition, which puts the 5 volumes into 3 volumes. And this is the story of a high school girl who is very disillusioned with her life and befriends some fashion students, becomes their model. She falls in love with the head designer, and drama ensues. A lot of dumb decisions are made, a lot of, learning about yourself and realizing what you really want out of life happens, and ultimately these characters make their decisions, and their lives and their choices are they have to deal with them. This is a series that I've said previously that I really dislike, and so how did this happen? Why is this series now being bought by G, who says that she only likes to collect stuff that she loves and wants to reread in her collection? Well, okay, so I said this again with the anime video that I posted yesterday. Watch it if you haven't, if you're interested. But I actually came across Paradise Kiss initially when I was in high school in a very similar situation, schooling-wise, to the main character of Paradise Kiss. My best friend and I watched the anime all in one night, and we really disliked the main character. We found that her choices were infuriating in how, in what she did, in what she decided to do, and how she wanted to live her life, or how she rationalized the things that she was doing in order to be with her romantic love interest, George, and wanting to, drop out of school, and all sorts of things, which now, as a 27-year-old, I understand are the stresses of being a high school student. But when I was in that position, when I was a high school student, a senior, I never, like, oh my God, I never would have even wished to have dropped out of school in my last year with only 3 months to go, because then I would feel even more frustrated that I'd wasted all of that time up until that point, and then I didn't even have like the paper graduation to say that I graduated. It wasn't even worth it. I wouldn't even have that qualification. And so my best friend and I were of a very similar mindset for that. We disliked the show because we disliked her and her choices. But so last month or earlier this month, a complete edition of like a 5-in-1 omnibus release was given to this series from Vertical for the 20th anniversary. And I was interested in it because I do, even though I disliked the show at the time, I do still have a lot of respect for Ayazawa. I think she is a great creator, and I do think that her stories are very well done for what they are, which are overwrought dramas where everyone makes terrible decisions but have to face the consequences to that. So I had never read the Paradise Kiss manga before this, and I was interested in trying it because I've heard a lot of good things about it. Yazawa is a very well respected creator, understandably, and her other work, Nana, is also hugely beloved by a lot of people, including very, very close friends to myself. So I wanted to give Paradise Kiss a try via the manga. I was going to buy the complete omnibus release, but then I discovered that a local seller had the original Vertical release available for sale for less than half of what the omnibus would have cost me. So I bought it and picked it up and read it that same day, and I really, knowing what to expect, knowing having the right mindset for it, and knowing like what type of story it was meant to be telling, and also having the perspective now of being a little bit older and being more understanding to this character and her situation, not just with schooling but her whole family situation, made me like the story a whole lot more than I did when I first came across it. So 2020 was kind of like my my second year of second chances. And Paradise Kiss was very much one that I wanted to give that second chance to. I still haven't had the opportunity to watch or rewatch the anime and see if my opinions have changed on that. But seeing how much I did enjoy this manga, I do think that I will have a very different opinion of it than I did when I was a 17-year-old. So I will say that this is a really interesting book and series because although these characters are very obviously teenagers, they have a lot of personal drama, a lot of personal relationship drama, and they do a lot of dumb things in order to maintain their personal relationships. That's very much, I think, just a teenage type of, or a human relationship type of thing that happens anyway. I think that there's a really it's really well done in how the series handles a first serious relationship, sexual intimacy, consent, lots of different things. There's queer representation as well in this series from multiple characters. And I think ultimately it is a story about youthful folly almost, and again taking control of or making decisions for your own life and what you're happy with, and finding your limitations in certain areas, and then just finding a goal and a dream for yourself, and also figuring out, because sometimes you can be in relationships with people and you think that everything's perfect and everything's, you're totally happy together, but you might not be the right people for each other, and you actually feed each other's bad sides, your bad habits. And I think that's something that Yazawa does, and that's a really complicated and nuanced scenario, but a very real and human one. And I think that's what makes this, and from what I've heard, Nana as well, very, very compelling. Absolutely must read, which is obviously such a huge difference from my original opinion of this series. So I am really happy that I was able to actually read the manga, which is something that I had wanted to do for a long time, but just hadn't been presented the opportunity. And yeah, I'm happy to say that Paradise Kiss has definitely become a much more favorable series to myself, now that I'm more prepared and aware and accepting to the type of story that it is trying to tell. So yeah, check out Paradise Kiss if you like josei and more serious shoujo romantic relationship stuff. It is one to absolutely check out. So speaking of relationships, we have a debut series from Seven Seas, one that I was looking forward to, and it just absolutely exceeded my expectations. I also did first impressions on this book, and that is My Androgynous Boyfriend by Tameko. This is an ongoing josei story about a woman and her beautiful boyfriend who is very much into the androgynous or genderless fashion movement. So he dresses in a very non-gender conforming, I guess, or maybe even more feminine fashion than what would be expected of a young man in Japan. He is so sweet. I love their relationship. I also think that it's really wonderful that the girlfriend, she's an editor, and so she's kind of the breadwinner for the couple. He's a model, he has a social media presence. I think he also works at a store, but he's certainly not, he looks after the house. He makes a lot of the meals because she's the one who works very, very long hours, and I would expect her job is a little bit more stable than his. And so not only does this series challenge gender norms and perceptions and gender roles with the literal fashion and how the characters look and behave, but their personalities as well and their roles within the couple. And in saying that, this guy, this androgynous boyfriend who is very beautiful, he can do flawless face of makeup, his outfits are incredibly cute and fashionable and on trend, he can accessorize like no tomorrow, he gets his nails done, his hair done, but he does that for himself because that's how he wants to present himself. It's what makes him happy. And by that same token, it's nothing to do with his own sexuality or his gender. He doesn't regard himself as a queer person because he's not. He doesn't feel like he's any less of a straight man just because he likes putting on eyeliner or likes having his nails done. And I think that's a really, really wonderful thing to see in manga. Counterpoint to that, we have his girlfriend who she doesn't mind necessarily putting on makeup or getting dressed up, but that's not her priority in life. And her partner, he doesn't see that as a necessity for her life. He loves her for her, and he doesn't care if she's gone 3 nights without sleep so she's not wearing eyeliner. He thinks she's adorable anyway, and she knows he's adorable. Her adoration for him is in extremely consistent. She is a fan of pretty boys, of like people who are within this androgynous fashion, and she's kind of the one who introduced it to him properly in high school. He was always very conscious of his self-image and, you know, dressing up and looking good and accessorizing, but she was the one who helped him kind of capitalize on that and market himself. And so they're both 100% supportive of each other's careers, of each other's lives and personality, and it's the best. It's the best. I love it. I love it. These are couple goals right here. And as I said, just because our male character is more so the homemaker, does participate in a more traditionally feminine behaviors like makeup and like getting your nails done and modeling, fashion, that sort of thing, it doesn't mean that he's not a guy and he thinks he's not a guy, and other people have misconceptions about their relationship and about him and about how he should feel about his girlfriend. But the great thing is that they don't care. They know the truth about their relationship, and it's not dependent on what other people, what outsiders think of them. And damn it, I love it. It's so good. If you're like me and you are a fan of this type of story, if you're a fan of manga or media that challenges gender norms, if you're a fan of healthy, wonderful, sweet, supportive, romantic relationships, and also established relationships, I must mention, because these two have been together since high school. They are now in their mid to late 20s. So it's been, I think in the manga, in this volume, they celebrate their 7th anniversary. So they've been together for a while. It's not a falling in love story either. And if that's your thing, like it is mine, then check this one out. You will not go wrong and you will not be disappointed. Yeah, I love it. It's like this manga was written for me. I also really like the couple other side characters that have been introduced, most notably Kira, who is our main, Meguru, our main guy's friend, modeling friend, who is also sort of an androgynous model. And he is an interesting case in of himself, and dang is he androgynous. I had to it took me a while to figure out whether he was a guy or a girl, and then it became more apparent as you read, and there's okay, no, that makes sense. He's a guy, just by the way. But yes, my androgynous boyfriend, perhaps the strongest debut of this month, but I will put a caveat on that because, of course, there was so many wonderful, wonderful debuts this month. And, of course, Rose of Versailles technically came out last month, but I only got it this month. So, of course, there's too many good series coming out, guys. Too many. Check out also my first impressions on this. And, yeah, I hope people buy it because it deserves to be bought. So next is another debut volume from a brand spanking new publisher as well. And this is one that I was very, very excited for, highly anticipating. When it got announced for license, I was super excited because this is A Man and His Cat by Umi Sakurai. This is a very skinny book, I will say. So maybe wait for a sale for it. But this is really a must-read, I think, for cat lovers. It's definitely, but even just general pet owners will gain something from this. So this is the story of an older man who adopts a cat who is a little bit older now because he's kind of ugly looking, and so was rejected by everyone prior to this, and the cat isn't quite certain that this is a permanent thing, that he actually has found a home, and the two find companionship with each other. And it's adorable, dang it. This is, yes, I think anyone who's owned a cat or owned a pet will understand the sentiments of this manga. It's so sweet. It's so cute. And it's just really heartwarming and wonderful and healing. So I think a lot of people were aware of this manga because it did have scans and things floating around online. There was a lot of online buzz about it. So the fact that we have now gotten it in English is really, really wonderful. And personally, I do not own a cat. My family doesn't have cats. We did previously have a cat when I was very, very young. We were still living in the US. And not actually by choice, really. That cat had been dumped on us as a kitten, but we adored that cat. He was wonderful. He was amazing and just the perfect pet. And the thing is about cats is that they're very individual. They definitely have personalities, and because of their independence, they are their own person. And so you really have, sometimes a lot of people who dislike cats haven't interacted with a cat they've gotten along with, if that makes sense. And this isn't like cats are better than dogs or dogs are better than cats, which does kind of come up in this manga as well. I love them both. I have no problems with both. The only reason we don't have a cat now, and the reason we have a dog, is because where I live, we don't want the cat killing native marsupials and little animals, because my mum also doesn't believe in indoor only cats. She doesn't think it's fair for the animal, and our dog would never kill anything, so we're not worried about that. She's a little fluff ball, and she has a bark, but she's never killed anything. So I think anyone who loves their pet, regardless of whether it's furry or if it has feathers or fins or whatever, anyone who has had a companion animal will understand the sentiment and understand how sweet this is. It's very, very good. But of course, people who do own cats, who have cat children, this is a manga made for you. It is so sweet, so wonderful, and a really, really, really solid debut title for this publisher. It makes me really excited. It also is very high quality, in particular for the volume. It's quite heavy despite being very thin, which means that it has a heavier paper, which means a more expensive paper. It's a higher quality book all around. It also has color pages. So yeah, if you're wanting to pick it up, it is a very, very nice release from Square Enix as well. Check it out. I'm going to preemptively apologize for the thunder because it is raining and I'm not waiting to film this because it'll get too late in the day. But I've talked about some wonderful debuts. How about some wonderful finales? Because I have one of those as well this month. And this is Happiness Volume 10 by Shuzo Oshimi, obviously the creator of Flowers of Evil, Inside Mari, and other such things. This is a story of a teenage boy who is turned into a vampire, and terrible things happen. Not just to him, to other people and other vampires that he knows. It's typical Oshimi. I think it's very dark, purposefully, but it is ultimately a story about discovering yourself, and the vampirism allegory is quite strong. I think there's a little bit of creativity insofar as, because of Oshimi's style, the artwork pairs very well with the vampirism, if that makes sense, in the series. I thought it was a really strong finale. I think it shows and displays the different time limits on and just kind of life cycles of humanity and vampires very, very well. But the importance and impact of ties with other people, regardless of that differing passage of time. It's super duper good. May break your heart. But that's kind of what good Oshimi titles do. So I'm really happy. This is the first of Oshimi's titles that I've completed in my collection. I've read Inside Mari in its entirety prior to this via Crunchyroll, so it's not the first Oshimi title that I've finished, but it is the first one that I've physically collected in my collection. So it's kind of interesting that, this is the end, but there is a new one out and I have not yet picked it up. So spoilers, it's not going to be in the rest of this video, but I am interested in it. And Oshimi, I've always likened to Asano in that I feel you have to be in a very specific mindset to understand what the point, or to fully feel the effects of the manga. It's very evocative of certain mentalities and certain emotions, and so it's not one that I will say, oh, you have to read it. But if you like vampire fiction, if you don't mind some brutality, like a lot of violence, there's a lot of violence in this series, then check it out. And if you don't mind very twisted human mentality and the human condition, then check it out. But if that sounds like too much for you, then give it a miss. Oshimi is probably not a creator that you want to be reading readily. But Happiness was very good. And I think it was interesting to read Oshimi's afterward after reading it, insofar as how he feels this series addressed what happiness is and how people find happiness. And I think that's such a large theme within the series that isn't inherently obvious if you're just trying to take it at surface level with oh dang, cool vampire stuff, which the vampire stuff is not cool. If that's what you think cool is, then oh no, I feel sad for you. But yeah, Happiness is very, 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 very good. So, continuing with the large trim manga, I also was very excited to get two separate volumes from two separate series from my favorite creator of all time. The first one being Viz's most recent release of Oku, The Inner Chambers by Fumi Yoshinaga. This is volume 16. This is a historical fiction about Edo and the emperor and the shogunate and things like that, and the inner chambers, which are the harem belonging to the emperor throughout history. And it is based off of real historical Japanese events. As you can see, there's a lot of talking. This is definitely a politically focused manga. But it takes place in a Japan in where a large portion of the male population has died. So the actual male population is very low. And because of this, women have taken on the roles traditionally left to men, including that of governance. So the emperor is a woman. Therefore, the inner chambers are full of young men. And it's basically a gender-flipped history. Which is really interesting. And even if you don't know a huge amount about Japanese history, you learn a lot from this manga. But also, oh my gosh, there is never a more better drama than the scheming inside of high society. Oh my goodness. If you like your soap operas, history and like the emperor and all of the upper classes, that you need to be reading stuff, because man, the backstabbing, the scheming, the political maneuvering is magnificent. Plus, of course, with any Fumi Yoshinaga title, she gives a real depth to the characters. They feel like real people. They make really smart choices, they make really dumb choices, but ultimately they make really human choices. And all of them feel like, even if they're protagonists or antagonists, you really feel for the characters and what they're going through, and you can understand why characters make the decisions that they do. Even if you don't agree with them, or even if you hate that character, you understand why they chose to do what they do. Yoshinaga, as you saw with the artwork, is, in my opinion, a phenomenal artist. I think her artwork is so expressive. It doesn't need to be highly detailed or like super hyper realistic to be incredibly effective. And this book, it just continues what is wonderful about this series. Obviously, as a huge fan of historical fiction, this is one of my favorite ongoing series, just full stop. I love it. And I will say that this series follows multiple generations of Japanese history, multiple emperors, so many years, over several centuries, has been covered throughout this manga, and I think that's a really compelling thing as well. So if you don't mind reading a manga that does have a very heavy political focus, and with a lot of talking heads and conversation and economic and governmental discussion, and plus with a old-timey English translation, then you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not trying this, because it is well worth the read. Next is the other Yoshinaga title that I got this month, and that is volume 14 of What Did You Eat Yesterday? This is the most recent of Vertical's releases for this series, and this follows a gay couple in Tokyo and all of the various meals that they make for each other and they eat, and how meals their life revolves around, and how meals bring people together, and it's so good. I love it. And how meals play a part in our lives, which I think is something that this manga in particular does incredibly well. So I've said this before about this series, but it is my go-to recommendation for people looking for a established domestic relationship kind of couple. I really love how domestic this series is. We have a couple who, at this point in the manga, have been together over 15 years and are in their 50s, which is not something you see a lot of with manga about any kind of couples. It's very rare that you get couples in like later on in life and in middle age-ish type of situations. So of our two main characters, we have Kenji, who is a very straight-laced lawyer. He is the one who's mainly the cook at home. He's very focused on his self-image, how he presents himself, his health, and because of that, he likes to know how his food is prepared. He likes for everything to be very healthy. So he makes most of the meals, and he takes great joy in making meals and trying new things. And he's also, despite being a very well-established and well-respected lawyer, he is quite frugal. He has a plan for his future. He knows that as a gay man in Japan, he doesn't have the security for when he retires that a lot of straight couples with children do. So he doesn't like to waste money when he can be saving it for retirement, things like that. His boyfriend, Kenji, or his partner, I should say, is a hairdresser. He's a lot more openly gay. He's out at work versus Shiro, who is not out at work, aside from with his boss. And he's a lot more, like, he's just very out and proud. He doesn't really have any qualms with the gay community. He has a lot of gay friends, whereas, again, Shiro really doesn't. He doesn't see himself as fitting into the wider gay community. So they're a little bit of opposites, but they definitely understand each other. They complement each other well. And for a lot of the series, Kenji acts as the reaction to the meal. He's the one who will outwardly like say, "Oh, this is delicious. I love it. Thank you. You're always so good at cooking." Which, as readers, you're like, dang, now I really want to try that. I will warn people that this manga is like 75% recipe. So if you're not a fan of food manga or cooking manga, give this one a miss. Yoshinaga is very in love with food, and it is very evident. And this is probably where she gets her most self-indulgent. She can throw out pretty much any recipe she can come across. And I think it's really nice to see a realistic, not only, as I said, established domestic couple, but doing actual things that people in their late 40s and 50s who have been together and lived together for a long time, who are well established in their jobs, who aren't like initially falling in love or anything like that. That domestic isn't just so much in like their relationship with each other, which of course is a huge part of this, or just in the fact that they eat their meals together, which again is sort of a large part of this. But like Shiro, he looks for the best prices in food. He goes out for sales. He likes to, cook a lot and then freeze it, so in case he can eat it later, or have something in case he doesn't want to cook. Like it's very much like a homemaker type of mentality. Someone who's lived a long time, who's provided for themselves and a partner or a family for a long time. That's the that's part of the domesticity as well. And it's just done so well. This particular volume, there's a lot of really great stuff in here. I really liked the chapter because for both of these characters, they have pretty differing relationships with their family. Shiro doesn't have a super close relationship with his parents. He's the only child, and they did not, and still really don't, fully accept that he's gay. They don't really understand it. Whereas Kenji has always had a very close relationship with his mother and his sisters. He's kind of only been the only boy, and they don't really care that he's kind of one of the girls, as it were. So there's a particularly powerful moment in this particular chapter in this volume where one of the previous volumes, Kenji went with Shiro to his family's home to be introduced to them for the first time, because despite living together and being in a relationship for so long, because of the friction and the non-acceptance from his parents, he didn't want to expose his partner to that, and he knew that it wouldn't necessarily go well. But he was introduced to his family, and it didn't go wonderfully. This still caused a lot of arguments and friction with his parents. But within this chapter, we have Shiro helping his parents buy a grave site area because they're getting older. They're sort of preparing for their eventual death. They know that, their lives are getting to that point where they need to start making plans. And as their son, he's trying to help them with all of that. And when he gets home, he asks Kenji, like, well, I was helping them with this, and there's like an automatic or like a different system now, and you can have multiple, a lot of the time with family graves you have multiple people there, but they were saying, like, he said, well, when we were at the place, when we were at the cemetery, my mother was saying, how about we buy like a family grave so that there's multiple people, so eventually you and your partner, when you die, can be, buried, quote unquote, with us. And like that kind of recognition is obviously a huge thing, but like, even though, and he's like, don't think about it too much, because she doesn't understand the implication of that. I think it does a lot of the nuances of being a queer person in Japan, and just, I think, a queer person in general, and the relationships, the various things that you have to handle throughout your life, with family and with just, getting on in life, like those sorts of things. And I think it just does it so well. It's so hopeful as well. It's just kind and nice. And I think I've said it before, again, in regards to this manga, but I think it's nice to see a long-term established gay couple in manga as well, because so much of romance media or queer, like LGBT media, or like BL, Yuri, stuff like that, is the falling in love, confessing your feelings, we're in high school or we're just young people, and the start of the relationship, and then it ends, where you don't see huge amount of like queer people who have been together for a long time, stay together, obviously are intending to be together for the rest of their lives, and getting like them as a main character in a series. So yeah, really wonderful on a lot of different fronts, and I'm really happy that we've gotten this most recent volume. Next, we have the most recent volume of Silver Spoon. This is 13. This is Hiromu Arakawa's recently ended comedy slice of life high school series about a city kid who joins an agricultural school for high school, and his friendships with the other students, his learning about the agricultural industry and the various stresses and just various perceptions and experiences being shown through his friends, and that the various experiences that his friends are going through. This is complete in Japan in 15 volumes, so we only have 2 more volumes until it's finished in English. We did not get this series for a decade, and then now it's kind of wonderful that we've caught up enough that we're pretty much ending it right when the Japanese, like within the year or within the 18 months since Japan finished it, we caught up pretty well. I think Yen Press did a good job in keeping it fairly snappy for releases. I have said this before about Silver Spoon. I think it's one that most people should read, even if you have a distaste for the agricultural industry, even if you don't necessarily agree with, farming or like animal farming, things like that. I think it gives a really balanced perspective of not only the people behind the food industry and agricultural industries and the choices that they make and why certain things are in place for the agricultural community, but also the animals and the relationship between farmers and the animals, or the products, the foods, whatever their crops that they create and give and sell for us masses, for us normal, non-agricultural people. It's very, very well done. You can see how much of this comes from Arakawa's heart, her personal experience growing up on a dairy farm. It's a fun, funny series, and I think it does a really good job at everything that it wants to do. I've said it, like with every single volume of the series, I've said it before, that this is definitely the story that I think Arakawa's always wanted to tell people. And Fullmetal Alchemist's fame was kind of the avenue for her to do that. It gave her the opportunity to, and the freedom to tell a story like this later on. Because this is not a story that I think a lot of publishers would initially jump onto if she wasn't so well known for Fullmetal Alchemist. And it is a really important story. It has a lot of very important messages and themes, and I'm so happy that we've gotten this in English now, because it took far too long for us to get it, and now it's almost over. I have to do a reread once it is. Read Silver Spoon. So next is another volume from Yen Press. This is volume 3 of Phantom Tales of the Night by Matsuri. This is an ongoing yokai story about a mysterious inn and its owner who asks for guests for their deepest, darkest secrets in exchange for a wish, and that wish will be granted, but not quite in the way that you expect. And it's a very Monkey Paw-esque type of situation, as is prototypical for yokai stories. And oh boy, I love it. This is definitely my type of thing. I've heard a couple people not like this manga, which is totally fine. I don't think that every manga is for every person, but I have heard some one of the criticisms that I heard for volume 1 was that the main character, Honor, doesn't have any regard for human life, or there's very low regard for human life in the series. And my immediate thought was like, well, duh. Like, he's a weird monster creature. Like, what do you expect? I think that's part of the whole yokai understanding, the aesthetic. They are inhuman creatures. They may look human, but they do not have an understanding of human society, of our ethical or moral, grounds and behaviors. And that's what draws the curiosity of yokai, including Owner. He is so interested in the lies that people tell and the secrets that they keep. And it just keeps him compelled to keep interacting with humans. And that's what makes this type of character so interesting. He's not meant to be inherently, he's not a good person. He's not a person at all, really. And I think it's interesting how set on human morals people are when we're talking about yokai. And I totally understand that, as I said, not everyone's going to like this. I don't think that everyone, I'm not like, I don't understand how they could dislike that. But that kind of seems like a weird criticism. That's like complaining that a vampire is drinking blood in a series, or like a werewolf is howling at the moon. It's just kind of like, yeah, that's what they do. The second volume, we learned a little bit more about some of Owner's assistants. The second volume, we learned about Butterfly and his background and how he continually loses his memories. And so he doesn't fully understand who he is or why he's so interested or why he's even attached to the inn and its proprietor. And so he's searching for his own answers in that, in how he interacts with people, because, again, that's something that we see in the first volume. and in this volume as well. This volume we get Earth Spiders, or Spider's background, his relationship and how he became attached, I guess, to Owner, why he acts the way he does. And I think it gives him, all three of these characters, main characters, have very interesting, we don't know anything about Owner, which is good. Keep it that way. He's meant to be an enigma. That's kind of the appeal. But Spider and Butterfly have two very different experiences and two very different backgrounds, and I think that they play off each other very, very well, and that's what influences their choices and how they interact with people. We also have we have two other recurring characters. The character from the first chapter, who's a boy who discovers he's dead and is like a skeleton under his clothes, who is now just trying to exist as a high school student, and a flashy exorcist who has very interesting ties to the Owner, and his whole like bloodline, clan, whatever, has been trying to get rid of this mysterious demon and his inn for many a generation. And volume 2 kind of shows how they met, and oh man, that explains why he does not like this guy. Again, in humans, yokai do not have the same moral standards as humans. Let's just say that. But I thought it was really interesting that element, and the story of Spider, especially in this volume, reminded me a lot of Hellgirl. But I like that we do have bits and pieces that do interconnect. We also have another character who's introduced in the second volume show up in this volume. So slowly these webs are being weaved, and we see all of these people who have interacted with this inn and how it's affected them. Not just the, supernatural characters, but others as well. It's so good. It's so good. It is definitely, like, aside from Nasume's Book of Friends, for this type of, like, creepy, eerie yokai story with a twisted horror element to it, this is my favorite coming out. You guys know I'm a sucker for yokai media and yokai manga, so not a surprise. I love this. I cannot wait for volume 4. Finally, for the large trim manga, or at least the large trim general manga, quote unquote, we have Skullface Bookseller Honda-san, which is the penultimate volume. This is volume 3. And this is a comedy series about a bookseller named Honda who depicts herself with a skull head. And it's basically about all of the crazy goings on in a bookstore and the various customers that she has to interact with, her co-workers, and just, oh my goodness, it's very funny. There's a lot in this series that I think anyone who's worked in retail will be able to understand. Obviously, this is one that I think book lovers and manga lovers will relate to a lot. There's a lot of references to manga, obviously. A lot of very famous comics. And it's very funny. It's very, very funny. I think Honda is a very likable character. Her co-workers are very likable, or very indicative of co-workers. Anyone who's worked in that kind of sales, retail, you know these people. You understand this. You don't have to have been selling books, but you understand this. And I think that's what gives it a universal appeal. So I also really like the continued support of the whole system, insofar as the customers giving meaning to the job. It's not so much that these characters love reading or love books, although they all do, I'm sure. And even if you have to deal with terrible publishers or terrible salespeople or terrible customers, there's always good to be found. There's always, there's always good customers, and that's what really makes it worth it. That's how, you know, you can find joy in that kind of role, where otherwise you might feel like you're just continually having to work constantly with no real payoff, I guess. It's a very fun series, very funny. The next volume is the last, so it's short and sweet as well. Check out the anime if you haven't. And yeah, Skullface Bookseller Honda-san is a very good comedy about retail. Next, we start with the standard trim size manga. I have another print debut, at least. This is one that I have already talked about in this video, in fact, and one that I've been following digitally. So this wasn't my first time reading this, or I've read actually a couple volumes of this already. And this is Toilet Bound Hanako-kun by Aida Iro. This is being put out by Yen Press, and is the story of a high school girl who wants to, as I said earlier when talking about the art book, she wants to have a wish granted. So she asks one of the 7 wonders of her school, one of the 7 mysteries, Hanako-san, who is typically shown as a young girl who is in the girls' bathroom, who will grant your wish. And she does that, or tries to, and who she summons is this young boy called Hanako-kun. And he agrees to grant her wish. Well, he kind of reluctantly grants her wish, maybe. Things go wrong. They do not work out. But ultimately, this girl becomes his assistant. And so she has to help him with some of the other mysteries around the school, because they're kind of wreaking havoc and causing trouble. And he's in charge. He makes sure that they don't do that. We are also shown or introduced to many other characters who are either mysteries or just other students who have various different roles throughout the series. I really, really like the series a lot. Again, here's my bias of supernatural and yokai and mystery stories coming out, but I think that this story, as I said, again, with the art book, I think it has a really distinct style. I think it has a pretty good balanced tone of humor and seriousness. I think Hanako has enough of a inhuman side, but enough of like humanity as well to be relatable and to be likable. And he's very much an oddity. He doesn't quite get it, but the longer you go through the manga, we learn more about him and we learn more about his background. And it's great to read. I think he's definitely a mystery in of himself, and it's very compelling wanting to learn more about him. I think that the main trio of characters are very fun. I think they have a great dynamic together. And yeah, again, watch the anime. I think it's a great adaptation. It's very stylish. It's very fun. It's very funny. It does have some quite serious action, and there's a bit of creep factor, a bit of spoopiness to this. So, you know, what more do you want with your classic ghost story? It just is wonderful. And there's a large mystery as well of who is causing all of these problems around the school with the school's mysteries. We shall find out. That's what we're trying to figure out. And it's really, really well done. I think don't let the title dissuade you from trying it, especially if what I've described sounds interesting to you. It's probably one of the I guess worst sounding titles around and out in manga, but it's not actually inaccurate. And it is quite, like, it's evocative of the Hanako-san myth or rumor, so it's very much a part of what this character is, if that makes sense. I don't know. I can't really think of an alternative title, aside from just, like, plain old Hanako-kun that would work better. But again, don't judge a book on its cover or its title unless there's something really egregious in the title, like slave elf brides and things, because we got that as well. But yeah, this is a really wonderful little series, and I think there's 9 volumes in English digitally so far. I think there's 12 or maybe more. There might be way more, like 15 or 19 volumes in Japanese. So it's ongoing. But there's a lot to look forward to. And as I said, check the anime out. Next, continuing with the yokai manga, supernatural manga, we have Shigeru Mizuki's Kitaro, The Trial of Kitaro. This is the 7th of these collected drawn quarterly volumes that we've gotten. And this, like always, is the classic yokai, like original yokai story about the young ghost boy Kitaro, who is the last of his kind, and he works as an intermediary between humanity and monsters, basically. He's a little bit of a Dennis the Menace type of character, but he's also very fair. He kind of metes out punishment where it's needed. He keeps the peace between both sides. And this is a kid's manga. It was written in the 70s for children, 60s or 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And it shows its age. Like, this is not a series you go into expecting like a long ongoing story or anything like that, but this is a classic. It's very beloved. It's still incredibly relevant in Japan, and a lot of people still love it. It currently has an anime adaptation airing. Here are my thoughts on both Kitaro and Mizuki in the Yokai podcast that I had a couple months ago on this channel. Yeah, that's the second time I've plugged the podcast, but we talk about some really interesting stuff there, so if you are interested in any particular topics, I think it's well done, and I do think that my co-host and I try to approach things in a way that people may not be aware of, and we try to be as informative as possible. But this particular volume is just another collected, hand-picked stories for Kitaro. I think Kitaro is definitely a series that kids will continue to enjoy because it's very timeless. It's very funny. It's a bit mischievous. It's a little bit, Goosebumps level spooky. It's a bit weird, and kids love that. I really like that these volumes are pretty, they're similarly priced to a standard manga volume, so they are accessible to kids and young people in the West. I think the largest, problem or issue or hurdle they'd have to overcome is that this is very lovingly translated, but a lot of the monster or yokai names are what they are in Japanese, and we don't have a lot of reference points to them in the West, so it's a very Japanese supernatural focused story. And also Mizuki invented so many yokai as well. But I think that kids are very adaptable. Monsters don't have to be inherently recognizable for them to enjoy them or to find them creepy or quirky or whatever it is. So I don't think that would actually be a problem. So yeah, Kitaro, wonderful. Really happy we're continuing to get these, and yeah, check it out. This is one of those classic manga that we're seeing more of, but I know that not a huge amount of people are buying, and I want more people to buy them because I want more stuff of this era, of this just importance as well that isn't Tezuka. Not that I hate Tezuka or anything, but I'd like just a little bit more diversity. That'd be nice. And I want to continue to support publishers that do give us a little bit more of that diversity. Another supernatural manga. I don't know. I didn't plan this, I swear. So this is volume 33 of Kakaishi. I got this secondhand. You can see it still has its library stickers on there because I am keeping it this way because I'm going to be doing a video on basically restoring library copies. Although this is in pretty good condition, so it's not like really beaten up or anything. But this is a very underrated shonen action manga about a middle school boy who is a Kakaishi who knows how to create borderlines, and his family has been in charge of protecting a sacred ground and sacred site for generations, centuries, along with the neighboring family, the neighboring clan, the rival clan, who is his childhood friend and neighbor, and now Kakaishi partner in protecting the school. She is a year older than him, and I love this manga like a whole lot. I really, really like it a lot. I had heard really good. I've said this again. I keep repeating myself, but Kakaishi has a real warmth to it and a real quietness to it that other shonen of its time kind of didn't or doesn't. And I'm slowly learning that I just really like how these characters are depicted, how their dynamics with each other. I think Yellow Tanabe does a really great job in how she writes not only the main character but the supporting cast. I think there's a lot of really interesting and fun things going on there. But when there is a very traumatic or terrible thing that happens, the manga takes the time to slow down and reflect and to recover from that. It's not, it's not a one chapter like, oh, we're going to be sad about this. Well, we got other shit to do. We got to keep getting better. You see lingering sadness about various things throughout the series, and I think that gives it a permanency and a very realistic human element to the story, even though it is kind of a it has spirits and yokai and stuff. I also really like how our main character, he is a little atypical for a shonen protagonist. Yes, he wants to protect the people he cares about and the town, and he feels responsibility for this area, but he doesn't, he's not wanting to be the best Kakaishi. He doesn't think that he deserves to be, the grandmaster borderline creator or anything like that. He's just doing that because it is his family's responsibility. It's how he's been raised. It's what's expected of him as the next head of the family. But that's not his personal dreams. He wants to be a cake maker, a baker, a pâtissier. And I think that's really wonderful as well, kind of bucking the shonen gender expectations. I think it's just done really well. I really like the girl, his partner, his friend, and her role. I think she goes through a lot of very complicated things, and just their relation, like a non-romantic relationship, their friendship, their partnership, having worked together for so long, having known each other for so long, it does give, there's just a familiarity there that makes it really nice to read and really fulfilling to read when you do see how much these characters care about each other, and for our main character, how much he cares about his siblings, the complicated relationship he has with his family because of their expectation for him to continue being a Kakaishi despite his actual goals and dreams. It's just really good. And then meanwhile, bad stuff is happening. The world, the unnatural, supernatural world is not happy. There's some stuff going down, and I think that, like, it's a pretty typical shonen setup, but it does it very well. It's quite compelling, and it makes me want to continue reading it. It's only 35 volumes. It is complete and has been complete for many a year now. And I said this before, I do think that it was sort of ill-timed, not only in the release in English, but perhaps also in Japan, because this was coming out at the same time of a lot of the very heavy hitters of shonen, stuff like Fullmetal Alchemist and Naruto, Bleach, etc. Even stuff like D. Gray Man. I think it was just overshadowed a little bit by a lot of those titles. And so I do want more people to read this, because I do think that even shonen fans don't really know about this, and they should, because it's very good. I'm also wanting more of Yellow Tanabe's works to be licensed and released in English. I'm still debating and fighting myself as to whether I import the Singaporean release of Laughter at the End of the World for a horrendously high cost, which is only a single volume. And I do hope that Birdman may get a release somewhere someday. Give me more Yellow Tanabe. That is all. Next, we've got some Shoujo Beat titles. We have the most recent volume of Snow White with the Red Hair by Sorata Akiduki. This is an ongoing historical romance, or I guess fairy tale kind of kingdom, royal setting type of romance. It's not really quite fantasy. That's not really the right setting, but it's about a young woman who escapes her home kingdom after being targeted by the prince for her beautiful red hair in order to become like part of his harem or whatever. And she runs away. She has dreams and goals of being a herbalist, and when she runs away, she runs into who she later finds out is another prince from a neighboring kingdom. And those two really hit it off, but he invites her to his kingdom in order to pursue her dream of becoming a herbalist. And it's about their romantic relationship, but also Shiroyuki's work as a herbalist, the relationships with the neighboring kingdoms, and various problems and how they solve them as a team, because we have not only Zen, the prince, but then his older brother, so the first prince, and then we have his personal guards, and the third guard, who's also his personal guard, but also like Shiroyuki's assistant guard, her relationship with the other court herbalist. It's just super good. It's really, really good. I think that this has I really like how the relationship is very supportive of each other. I think that there's a real wonderful quality to how much trust that these two give each other. And although the romance, this is a romantic story. Definitely the romance is very relevant and very prevalent, but it's not all about that. And I think that's a good thing. I think it makes it more interesting, because if it was just about the romance between Shiroyuki and Zen, then the story could be over by now. We wouldn't need a huge amount to this, but because we are getting more things about the actual politics of the world and various conflicts and making choices insofar as what's right for the people and what's actually doable, what the expectations of both of them are, it just makes it more compelling. And then despite that, how much they support each other, regardless of their social and class positions and the issues that can bring up. Yeah. So I love this series. This is another one with an anime adaptation. Check it out. If you're wanting a shoujo that is with older characters as well, I think Shiroyuki and Zen are 18-19, and a lot of the side characters are like in their 20s. So they are teens, but they're not high school teens. It's not set in a modern day high school setting. And it does have characters who are very competent at what they do. They're very self-assured, and they're very supportive of each other as well. And you don't mind the kind of royal fairy tale type of setting, then check this one out. I mean, it's great. It's really, really good. I like it. And it is ongoing in Japan. It's very long, so we have a lot to look forward to. So this is, I think, the last volume I need volume 23, I think, still of this series, and then I'll be completely caught up. But this is volume 26 of Kaze Hikaru by Taiko Watanabe. This is a now completed, but very long, josei manga set within the Shinsengumi about a girl who pretends to be a young boy in order to join the Shinsengumi in order to get revenge against the people who killed her father and brother. She then also falls in love with Okita Soji, who is a real-life person, who is a member of the Shinsengumi, a legendary swordsman, and it's basically about the daily life of the Shinsengumi, and then obviously the historical events that they were involved with, but then also our main character hiding the fact that she's a girl, and then how life was for girls in this period of time, but then how life was for the Shinsengumi and the boys and young men who were part of that. It's good. It's good. This is a slow burn romance, and when I say slow burn, I mean slow burn. A super slow burn. This series only finished last year, I think. It has 42 volumes. We get like a volume every 8 months, if we're lucky in English. It's honestly a miracle that it hasn't been dropped, because I don't know who's buying this aside from myself and maybe 2 other people. And this is, yeah, I mean, it's a historical romance. It's got a lot of comedic elements. I think if you like history, and if you like this period of Japanese history most specifically, and if you like the Shinsengumi and, samurai and sword fighting and stuff, then you will appreciate this. I do think that sometimes the jokes haven't aged super duper well, but this series started in the 80s, I want to say. So it ran for a long time. It ran for a long time in Japan, and it may rival that length of time release schedule in English, because, as I said, we get a volume a year approximately. Sometimes maybe two if we're lucky, but we do not get volumes very regularly at all. And as long as Viz keeps releasing it, I'm going to keep buying it, because I like these characters. I think there's a real interesting dynamic between our main couple, which is exacerbated by the structure of the Shinsengumi. And yeah, I think that's Sei, our main character. She's very fun to read about. I think she's pretty cool. And yeah, try Kaze Hikaru, especially if you like historical romance and you don't mind a really, really long, like slow burn. We've gotten like admittance of feelings like internally with these characters yet, lot, but we're in volume 27, and I don't think we got any kind of movement on the relationship front. So yeah, it's that slow, but it's really interesting insofar as the historical stuff, and I think it's pretty great. So yeah. So I have another complete series here to show off, and there are a lot of volumes in this series, which is what really boosted my numbers for this month, as I said. This is a series I never expected to pick up in print because it is disgustingly out of print. But, amazingly, I found someone on Reddit, if you can believe it, who was selling this series for approximately what it's a little bit over what it would have been retail. It's in perfect condition, and some of these volumes go for hundreds of dollars. So I was like, I'm going to buy that because I've read some of this digitally, and I really like it. Never expected to have it in print, as I said, and I jumped on the opportunity. I was like, well, nope, I can't miss out. So this is Twin Speaker by Ko Yaginuma. This is a vertical release, and this sold so poorly that the final volumes had to be condensed into fewer volumes because nobody was buying it. It was that bad of a seller. So I understand why it's out of print. And it's a real shame because this is a seinen story about a near future in where a group of kids are trying to get into space school. They are very interested in becoming astronauts and living in space and all things of that type. Our main character, she loves space, and she has an interesting, like, imaginary friend who has a lion head. Yeah, so it's got a little bit of a weird quirkiness to it, but it has a real melancholy, it's very hopeful, but it's also very melancholic at the same time, if that makes sense. I really liked what I read of it. I cannot wait to finish it, but this is volume 1. We have volume 2, volume 3, volume 4, volume 5, volume 6, volume 7, and 7 is where we get these condensed volumes because it wasn't selling. We gotta just try and finish it, guys. Volume 8, volume 9, volume 10, volume 11, and volume 12. So I think this is a 16 volume series in Japan, released in 12 volumes in English. And it is available digitally, as I mentioned, so if you want to read it, you can, if you're happy buying digital, because I doubt you will find a miracle like I did of somebody selling it, unless it's someone who really doesn't know what they have, because, as I said, many of these volumes go for ludicrous amounts of money. And I will never recommend people buy super out of print titles for ludicrous amounts of money, unless it's, unless you can justify that to yourself. I very rarely can, if ever. I don't think I've ever overpaid outside of my range for out of print title. So yeah, it's not something I personally do, but you're allowed to spend your money however you want. But I just couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my god, thank you. That's incredible. And you can see, like, these get thicker and thicker and thicker as well progressively, where 12 was like, we just have to finish it. We just got to get the rest of it out there. And I do commend Vertical and the team for putting out the entirety of it, because they could so easily have dropped it, because this was coming out in that period where a lot of titles were being dropped by majority of the publishers. And I don't know whether that was a contractual obligation or if they just... I'm pretty sure that like they actually, this was a kind of a personal project for the people at Vertical, and they loved the series, and so they wanted to finish it. They wanted to ensure that everyone could at least, who was following it, could at least get the end of it, which I appreciate. That's wonderful. Like, that's not something that ever happens in publishing anyway, but especially manga publishing. I think that's definitely a rarity. And yeah, Twin Speaker, really awesome find for me personally, but I think it's really exciting, and I'm very happy to finally have this series kind of full stop in a physical format. Never expected to get this. I was perfectly happy with my digital releases, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity when it presented itself to buy it when somebody had it for so ridiculously cheap, that they were selling from their own personal collection on Reddit. So I was like, hey, yep. As soon as it was posted, I was like, yeah, I want that. Let me know how much you want, and I'm happy to pay it, because I don't think prices were shit. I asked about prices. They told me, and I was like, well, yep, I'm getting that. Just let me know how to send that money to you. You get lucky on rare occasion with manga collection. Not very often, but sometimes you can. Sometimes stars align, almost physically in this case, and things work out. But yeah, Twin Speaker, kind of mind blown that it's even here, honestly. Still kind of recovering from the amazingness of the fact that I own it. Finally, for the quote-unquote normal manga, we have a volume of a series that I haven't bought a lot of. I bought the first omnibus ages ago when it first came out, and it's been hiding away kind of like it's not really in the collection itself proper. I kind of put it to the side because I was like, I don't know if I want to keep this. I like the story, but it's kind of an unfinished series, so maybe I'll give it up. And I just never got around to getting rid of it, almost. And then now the publisher's like, yeah, we're going to continue publishing it. And I was like, heck yeah. So I decided to get the volumes that I was missing, but this is Dark Horse again, so some of the volumes are not available currently, and so I'm just going to wait until they are available once again. But this is the 4th omnibus edition of the Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service. This is a 3-in-1 book that collects volumes 10, 11, 12 of the original series. Volume 5 of this omnibus will continue the story past what the singles that Dark Horse put out. So we have more of the story coming, which was incredible, and one of the most exciting surprises of, I think, Anime Expo, whatever it was, last year. Yeah, definitely a surprise. I'm not going to open this one up because this has a parental advisory explicit content logo or sticker on there. It earns that. This is the same creator. It's Hosui Yamazaki, who did MPD Psycho, which is multiple personality disorder psycho, which is also unfinished from Dark Horse, but it is intense. Dude, oh my goodness. This series and that one are not for the squeamish. You gotta be totally willing to be reading about gore and just hyper violence and mutilation and all of these things. So yeah, not for the faint of heart or the faint of stomach, certainly. But this is the story of a group of university students, or a group of people who call themselves the Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service, and they all have various powers, like psychic powers. Our main character, he can he's a psychic. He can talk to the dead or the recently deceased, and because of that, they find bodies and then they kind of return them to their families or to their owners or to whatever. They help them fulfill what they want to happen after their life. We have a lot of other characters with different backgrounds. We got dowsing and hacking and like mediums, spirit mediums and things like that. It's a pretty interesting, eclectic group of young people. But again, like there's violence, and well, not so much violence, because it's not so much like we see the violence happening, but we see the aftermath of a lot of like really twisted stuff. A lot of these people do not die in a peaceful manner. That's not how like abandoned corpses end up. Like that, you don't abandon a corpse if you died peacefully in your sleep at 87 years old. That's not, no. That's the reality of it. So, yeah, you're gonna see some pretty twisted stuff if you go into this series. So, fair warning. But yeah, aside from that, it's very, very good. It's quite funny. It has obviously a lot of dark humor, a lot of black humor. I would recommend it for people who are game. Like, it's definitely worth a read. And I'm super duper excited that it's continuing via these omnibus releases. They are thick. There's 3 books in one. And I know people complain about the spine, but like with everything, yeah, Eiji Otsuka is the writer and Hosoi Yamazaki is the artist. This is a safe page. We can open that. But I never have a problem with spines. I don't know what people are doing to their omnibus books that they keep breaking everything, but that's not, I don't know. I don't know how other people read stuff, so maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm super duper careful just by design. Who knows? But Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service, for anyone who didn't know, volume 2 and 3 of these omnibuy are out of print, or they need another print run, and they are Dark Horse, so they're getting better about their print runs, but it's still kind of slow. So I'm gonna wait for those 2 before I actually read this one, just because I have a gap, and I don't want to start, I don't want to jump around. Anyway, yeah, it's really exciting that this is being continued, and I'm really happy that Dark Horse is kind of going back to some of their titles that were previously abandoned and giving them a second try. Next, we're going to start with the Yuri. We have a couple Yuri things here. We have the first volume, which is technically the 6th volume of the Kasei-san series. This is Kasei-san and Yamada, which is the sequel of the original Kasei-san series. This is our girls in university, college, whatever you want to call it. It's wonderful. It's great. I mean, what can I say about Kasei-san and that I haven't said a million times already? I really love the genuine nature of these girls and their relationship and how they interact with each other and the realities of an adult serious relationship. I love the fact that we followed these girls into university and we're seeing their lives outside of high school and outside of the restrictions that has. I spoke in my anime pickups video that I just got the film, or like the short 1 hour OVA film, whatever, which was wonderful. I love this. This is one of my favorite Yuri coming out right now. I'm a little bit picky when it comes to Yuri, and thankfully things are changing, so there's a lot more for me to try and to read and to enjoy. And this is my number 1 recommendation for people wanting to get into the genre who aren't really that familiar with Yuri or don't like a lot of the tropes of older Yuri. It's wholesome and sweet and feels like a real couple doing real things, and and it doesn't feel like it's just ticking off boxes for expectation. It's wonderful. I am really happy that we've gotten so much of Kase-san and that we've gotten the sequel. I think it's pretty cool that for, like, obviously it says it's volume 1 of Kase-san and Yamada, but it does also have the 6 here, so it does keep it clear for anyone's numbering system, whichever one you go by. But yeah, this is really wonderful. Hiromi Takashima is great. I love her work. And yeah, read Kase-san. Finally, for Yuri, we have a completed series. This is 3 volumes from a publisher that I do not buy a lot of because I don't like supporting them. I have a very complicated relationship with Tokyo Pop. But this is a series that I was really wanting to read, and I finally did it. I finally bit the bullet. Volume 2 was particularly cheap, which has kind of prompted me to buy the whole series all at once. And that is Yuri Bearstorm, or Yuri Kuma Arashi. So we have Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. So this is based off of the anime, which is in typical Ikuhara fashion. Very weird, very gay. And kind of just wonderful. But the art is done by Akiko Morishima, who is a very well-known lesbian Yuri mangaka in Japan. We are finally getting some of her original stuff in English thanks to Seven Seas. The Conditions of Paradise was released this month, I believe. And so this is the story of girls who may be bears, or maybe the world is full of bears, but there's one girl who is an actual girl, and she comes from a family of bear hunters. And, you know, there's a lot of metaphor here. There's a lot of symbolism. But the series, it's like the anime series, focuses a lot on the relationship between these 3 girls plus one of the classmates, and their complicated love for each other. But this manga really it does have elements of that. It does focus on these characters, but it also focuses on the adults, the parents, the mothers of a lot of these characters who had their own complicated relationships when they were younger, and that's really the focus of this particular series, is that drama behind that relationship. It's really good. Again, I really like you know, these weird type of series. Revolutionary Girl Utena, Sarazanmai, of course, Yuri Kuma Arashi, Maru Penguin Drum are all wonderful in their own way. And this is really nice that it's not just a manga version of the show. It's obviously based on the characters and the world and the setting and whatever else, but it offers valuable additional material for those who are reading it. It's not just a rehash of what you've seen. And I really like Ikuhara's works. I'm hoping to get more of the adaptation stuff from his works. We have gotten a lot of it licensed. We have the upcoming Sarazanmai, Roeo, and Mabu single volume manga. We have the light novels also coming from Seven Seas. We have both the Penguin Drum light novels and manga as well coming from Seven Seas. Viz put out that beautiful collector's edition of the Revolutionary Girl Utena manga, and we've gotten the sequel for that licensed as well. So it's just Ikuhara all around. I'd like to see, some, I think there's light novels for Yuri Kuma Arashi, which would be cool if we got, but not too much to complain about for Ikuhara fans. This Yuri is definitely like, you have to be cool with the idea of polyamory and generational love, or love through generations of families, if that makes sense. There's even a joke at the end and the afterword that, like, wouldn't it be a wonderful world if everyone could have as many Yuri wives as they wanted? So it's basically that. Like, it's just, oh hey, yeah, we're just gonna have a throuple. It doesn't matter. Everyone has their Yuri counterpart couple, and you know, it's all love. We'll have, no matter how many girls you love, it'll be fine. You can have as many Yuri wives as you want. Which is very terribly self-indulgent, and that's fantastic. I think that's really fun, and but it's not for everyone, of course. I think if you're wanting something a bit more realistic, or if you're not into kind of harem endings or, you know, polyamorous style of endings or relationships, then maybe this isn't for you. But as a Ikuhara fan, as someone who really likes to see Yuri coming from actual lesbian women and supporting more of Morishima's works in English, then yeah, I can't complain about this. But I will complain that Tokyo Pop license, damn you Tokyo Pop, stop getting stuff I'm interested in. They have a couple other titles where I'm like, I'm gonna have to buy them from you, aren't I? Because I'm not, like, I want to support the artist, and I want to encourage, like, show that there's an interest in this market, but I hate you, and I want you to fire your CEO, and until you do, I'm not gonna trust you. Stop being shady. But yes, that's my complicated relationship with Tokyo Pop, the publisher. It doesn't really have any grounds or indication of my relationship to this series itself. This is good, so pick it up, support it, and yeah, enjoy. We've reached the BL. We're almost at the end, I promise, guys. So first up is Volume 5 of Ten Dance by Inoue Sato. This is marvelous. I adore it. This is an ongoing BL between two professional dancers, one who specializes in like standard ballroom, the other one who specializes in Latin ballroom. And dang, if the sexual tension isn't just blazing, guys. I love it. But man, oh god, it ended on such a, like, big cliffhanger. It kind of broke my heart. I'm just, this volume introduced a lot of stuff that I really appreciate that it introduced. It confronts its characters on the reality of what a relationship would be like between them, and the power dynamic between them, and the fact that neither of them have been in a gay relationship before and don't have any experience or expectation. Well, they have expectation, but their expectation is completely based off of their previous experience for women, or with women, I should say. And it's so good. It kind of breaks my heart, as I said, but damn. It's, yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorite BL that's coming out right now. It's one of my favorite, like, ongoing, longer series BL that I collect. It's just marvelous. The chemistry is sizzling. And and also as a dance fan, like, it's just so, dance just by its nature is, like, incredibly sensual, incredibly evocative, incredibly sexy. Like, that's the whole point of dance. And this creator just manages to capitalize on that so immensely well. I cannot wait for volume 6. I think we're all, and the thing is, we're caught up with Japan, so we're gonna have to wait. And I'm like, oh. Now it's gonna be a slower release, and it's, I hate waiting, because, as I said, it's kind of a major shift in their relationship, cliffhanger type of thing. And, this is why it's painful reading ongoing series. But yeah, Ten Dance, one of my favorite BL coming out right now, and I highly recommend it to everyone. Also, it's not super duper explicit, so if you're not into that, then yeah, you don't have to worry. Next is the sequel or follow-up to a book that was released last year, and that is The Carp on the Chopping Block Jumps Twice by Setono Mizushiro. This is the sequel to The Corner Mouse Dreams of Cheese, and is the story of two not very good people making terrible decisions, and who are terrible for each other, who are in a relationship, and it's messy, there's so much drama, and there's a lot of conflict, but I think it's an interesting conflict. And this isn't, like, I'm not telling you to read this thinking it's a healthy relationship, or that this is something you should aspire for in your life, because it really isn't. These characters do a lot of bad things to each other, to other people, and they rationalize it by the emotions they have for the other person. They break a lot of hearts, including their own, and ultimately they're not good for each other. But I think that despite that, it's a really compelling story, and sometimes relationships are like that. Sometimes people are in those sorts of relationships. If you are, get out of them, because there's other people who are more well suited for you. But I think there's an element to this that Mizushiro wrote these characters with the intention that what would influence you, or what would change you, and change your outlook on certain things, and what would you do for other people or someone else in your life, and how, like, the individual character, the individual personality of each character, and how the choices we make not only affect ourselves, but everyone else around them, and how we can hurt other people. I watched one of my very good friends here on YouTube, Mama Loves Manga. She does sort of short reviews of a lot of the titles that she reads on Instagram. And when she was sharing her thoughts on this particular book, and I guess the series overall, she mentioned the afterword, or the message from Mizushiro at the end of the book. And I completely agree with her in that is sort of crucial to the perspective of this work. It wasn't ever written intending to be like this happy romantic relationship. There's, like, right off the bat, there's manipulation, there's blackmail, there's extortion. It's not a good relationship. But the reasons Mizushiro wrote it the way she did, and the purpose with which she chose these characters to act in this way, and for this relationship to spin out the way it did, does give it a bit more credence than just trying to romanticize what these characters do and show them as, or like portray them as a really, this is fine, don't worry about them, this is good, this is what everyone should want in their relationship. It's interesting to see also kind of what people will put up with in a relationship, and how that affects, again, every aspect of their lives, how they interact with themselves, with other people, and when presented with better choices, how a lot of times people don't make that choice to go to fix their situation or to get out of their situation, because now it's familiar, now it's comfortable, now it's something that they know they will always be reassured in. And just the toxic, parasitic relationship that these characters have with each other, it's almost to this level where they know that what they're in isn't good. But at the same time, they know that if they're not with that person, their worst traits, their things that ruin their other relationships will continue to do that. And they will always think about the total acceptance they had in that really toxic, abusive relationship. It's interesting. And it's sort of like, as I was saying, there's a lot of nuance to these sorts of things. I think there's a lot of reasons why people stay in bad relationships or stay with partners who don't value them, or who stay with people who just they shouldn't be dating because they don't, it's not that they don't care about them, but they bring out the worst in each other. And I think that's also a very real part of life. So this isn't, like, I wouldn't say this is a BL for like, oh yes, I want a fluffy romance and I want to see these characters fall in love and live happily ever after. No, this is like a dark, twisted, psychological drama between people making terrible decisions for themselves, staying and committing to those terrible decisions. And so it's not one that is like wonderful insofar as I said, if you want like just a romance story, but I think that's purposeful. It's not glamorizing that. And I think that's the biggest difference between this and some of the more toxic older BL that have similar things but are portraying it as romantic or as like good. You know, that's fine. That's totally normal in a relationship. Don't worry about it. Manipulation, extortion, blackmail, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Which is unfortunately very prevalent in this genre. So yeah, I like Seto no Mizushiro's work. I think she has a lot of really interesting ideas. And I'm really happy that we have gotten this series, because it is kind of a cult little series. It's one that a lot of people really wanted for a long time, and I'm happy that 7 Seas has put it out. Finally, we have a release from Kuma Books, which is Faku's LGBT line subsidiary. This is their recent print release, Kena no Otaku Like Me, Really Be an Idol by Wakoko Wako. This is it's smut. It's you know, it does have a story, but it is really just an excuse to have these characters sleep with each other. And the great thing about Faku, whether it be their hentai or whether it be this Kuma line with queer couples, it is completely uncensored. But I will say that this and their other print release aren't inherently any more explicit than I would say a general BL title. This has more sex than that one does. It has kind of a sex scene every single chapter, but it feels like a normal BL title. It doesn't feel like a hentai does necessarily. So this is the story of 2 idol otaku, one who's a big nerd and kind of shy and quiet at school, the other who's a popular guy, good looking, whatever. And our nerdy guy has had a long-standing crush on this popular guy. He also live streams himself or streams himself online singing idol songs, and a lot of people think that he's a girl, and so he just plays into that. One day he discovers that this popular guy is also an idol otaku. He didn't know that before, and he wants to get closer to him knowing that, because he's like, well, we have a lot in common. The popular guy's like, oh no, you cannot know my secret, I haven't told anyone. So he tries to get blackmail material, basically, so he won't, spread his secret of him liking idols. So he takes him to his house, dresses him up in one of the idol outfits, and is planning on taking his picture in order to prevent, rumors starting or whatever. But, oh no, this popular guy is super into idols. Let's just put it that way. So he starts to physically react to this guy, who looks like a cute girl idol in a dress. Plus this, this dorky guy, he has this long-standing crush on him. They end up sleeping together. And, from there, the popular guy is like, well, now, I want to try and make you into a real idol, because I was saving myself for an idol. That was going to happen. And so it's them trying to, grow his popularity online as an idol, and then how that spins out, and then how their relationship grows from there. Of course, it's not brilliant, it's not highbrow, it's, it's a pretty cute, romance type story between these teens. Obviously very explicit, and that's why you buy the book. I don't think you'd be very happy if it wasn't. And it does have a single volume or single chapter, additional, just other additional short story in here, which is again just an excuse for some very explicit sex. And I will say that, as I said, it's not super duper explicit, or more so explicit than general BL. It does have uncensored genitalia, so you're gonna see some dick, which is not the usual in BL, obviously, because of censorship laws and stuff, obscenity laws. But that's the standard of Faku, is that they uncensor all of their titles. And I think it's really important that we have been getting a more diverse erotica for manga with the help of Faku, because they have really been at the forefront of legitimizing hentai in print, and just being all around really great publisher. They support their artists really well. They pay all of their people. I've heard nothing but good things coming from Faku, from both sides of the industry. And their books are really high quality as well. They're really some of the best stuff coming out in print, and it's kind of hilarious because obviously it's porn. It's just porn. And the fact that they are diversifying into BL and Yuri is a really cool thing. And I like supporting them for that. I do want to get more of their books. They have a couple titles for the Kuma line that I'm really interested in getting, most notably Canis or Canis, and the Yuri as well, which I can't remember the name of. I can never remember the name of it. But they have some of their hentai print stuff that I'm pretty curious into. I am not a prude. I will read smut a lot of people. But I haven't up until this point bought a lot of it, because Faku stuff is not always readily available to buy online, aside from their actual online store, and then international shipping gets expensive and stuff like that. So I'm waiting to get a solid list of titles to bulk buy, and then pay for shipping all at once, rather than piecemeal here and there, and not be certain on what what is coming out and what, you know, paying that much more per book. Anyway, I will also mention for this title, can an otaku really, like me, really be an idol? As you can see on the cover, our cute, dorky guy in a dress is the top. He is the, I guess, dominant within this relationship. And our more typically handsome, popular guy is the bottom. So if you like that relationship dynamic, like I do, then absolutely check this series out, this volume out. It's similar to the side character. There's no cross-dressing in that one, in that side chapter, I should say. There's no cross-dressing in that one, but it is like the dorky one is the top, and then the cool, tough guy is the bottom. But we have both characters cross-dressing in the main story. Well, our handsome, cool guy he's cross-dressing in the extra story. But, I mean, you know, it's all good. So yeah, if this sounds like your thing, and you are happy buying erotica and explicit BL, then give your money to Kuma and to Faku. They definitely deserve it. So that is everything that I got for this month of February 2020, manga-wise. Man, there was so much to get through, and if you survived till this long, congratulations. You truly are the best. The best people around. Because this is a commitment. I'm sure of it. As a way to thank all of you guys, I have just reached 3,000 subscribers. At the end of this week, so February the 28th, at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will be live streaming for the first time on this channel ever. It'll be a Q&A. It will also be channel updates and plans for the future and anything else that may arise throughout the stream. So if you're wanting to talk to me directly and immediately, check me out there. I hope to see some familiar people, and I really appreciate the support. As longtime people know, I've kind of been promising a live stream since 1,000 subs, and then it got pushed to 1,500, and then it got pushed to 2,500. I'm finally a bit more confident about it now that at 3,000, I'm like, yeah, I can do it. But apologies in advance if I can't, if something screws up majorly, but hopefully not. Otherwise, let me know your thoughts on any of these books, any of these series that I talked about today, if you've bought and read any of them, or if you're wanting to read any of them, if you love them, hate them, whatever that case may be. I'd love to know. I will also, as per usual, have the link to my Twitter and Instagram, and also Book Depository affiliate link in the description below. If you're wanting to follow me on any of those, that'd be great. Book Depository is there for if you're like me and you buy books but you're outside of the US and you usually have to pay high shipping fees. It's a great opportunity. Don't feel obligated to use it, but if you do, I do really appreciate it. Otherwise, I've spent way too long talking about all this stuff already, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye till then.